Hello, my name is Amanda Ludwigs, and I will be discussing the different causes of crime and why crime occurs. There are many factors contributing to crime. The two that I believe are worth mentioning first are genetics and upbringing. These two factors lay the foundation upon which a criminal is built. Genetics and environment are what shape an individual to become a criminal offender. The first concept that I will use in supporting this theory is the vulnerability model, which states that there is a direct link between inherited traits and crime. And it also states that these traits are often present at birth or shortly thereafter. This theory is supported by the data that having a criminal father makes one more likely to become a criminal themselves. This is true even when the child is adopted and grows up away from the criminal biological parent. There have been several studies conducted that support this concept. The first I'll mention was one done by Barry Hutchings and Sarnoff Mendnick. They found that in a group of adopted juveniles, having a criminal biological father strongly predicted future criminal behavior for the child. The findings of a second study, known as the Cambridge Youth Survey, also found that a large number of juvenile criminals have criminal biological fathers. Aggression is another trait that is both inherited and associated with crime. Having high levels of testosterone is linked to an increase of aggression, therefore an increase in potential criminal behavior. Both teenagers and men with higher levels of testosterone are those more prone to delinquency, violence, aggressive responses and tendencies, as well as drug abuse and alcoholism. One fact that supports this finding is that testosterone levels are highest among inmates who are convicted of committing both planned and unprovoked violent criminal acts. Testosterone levels steadily increase from the onset of puberty until roughly the age of 25. After the age of 25, the levels begin to decrease. This finding is consistent with the decrease in the rate of violent criminal behavior, as criminals are known to often age out of crime. And this is consistent with the fact that the majority of violent crimes are committed by males ages 18 to 30. But males are not alone in that an increase in sex hormones may predispose them to commit violent acts. In convicted females, a large number of those incarcerated for violent crimes were found to have been menstruating at the time of their crime. This is consistent with the findings that state aggression, violence, suicidal, and homicidal behavior increases the week before and also during menstruation. Excuse me. Drug addiction and alcoholism are both inherited and are both linked to criminal behavior. In fact, according to the American Psychological Association, 65% of homicides and 55% of domestic abuses, in those either the offender and or the victim had been drinking. Of those convicted of violent crimes such as murder, assault, robbery, and sexual assaults, 4 out of 10 of those incarcerated were found to have been drinking while committing their crime. This is more than likely due to the reduced inhibitions and increased aggression that comes when under the influence of hard drugs and alcohol. Decision-making skills are impaired, and the areas of the brain that are associated with violence and aggression are triggered as well. Another theory that helps explain why individuals commit crime is the differential susceptibility model, which states that some individuals are predisposed to environmental influences. There are many additional theories that are based on this concept, as well as many supporting statistical data. The process of behavioral modeling is one concept that I believe supports the differential susceptibility model. It states that behavior is is modeled through observation of social interaction, both direct and indirect. Some examples of direct interaction include family and environmental influences. Family, of course, being the most important, as that is who an individual spends the bulk of their time with, and therefore who they model the majority of their behavior from. This goes back to the finding that having a criminal father predisposes one to criminal behavior. One could reason that this is not only due to genetics, but also because the criminal behavior was learned by repeating the criminal acts that the individual observed their parents committing while growing up. And then studies have also shown that juveniles who witness immediate family members commit crime are also more likely to grow up to be criminals themselves. Also, children who suffer any form of abuse from family members are more likely to grow up to be criminals, as well as become subsequent abusers themselves. So next would be the environmental factors, which include peers, friends, neighbors, co-workers, even classmates. The more criminals an individual is around, the more opportunity they have to learn criminal and antisocial behavior. The concentration effect helps explain this. It states the most disadvantaged, impoverished population is consolidated in urban ghettos after those of working and middle class flee the area, going to a more advantageous location with more opportunities and less crime. Because the groups who commit the most crimes are living within close proximity to each other, the availability to learn criminal behavior is therefore greatly increased for the juveniles residing in that area. This is consistent with the findings that inner city urban ghettos and areas have the highest crime rates as well as the highest poverty rates. One example from our text was Shaw and McKay's study over 60 years, and that kind of helps confirm this phenomena that urban areas produce more criminals. They coined the term concentric zones, which states that the highest crime areas are inner cities, where the majority of the area's poorest citizens live. These areas are marked by gang and other criminal groups, along with just criminal individuals. Juveniles in these areas quickly learn that the most successful members of their community are the ones that are involved in criminal acts. Coupled with the fact that they're more than likely to have criminal parents, this leads them to affiliate with members of their inner city community who are criminals themselves. The differential association theory gives credit to this by stating that people commit crime when their social learning leads them to perceive criminal acts as more favorable to conventional behavior. The main principles of differential association all support the concepts I discussed in behavioral modeling, as well as Shaw and McKay's theory of concentric zones. The principles state that criminal behavior is learned, often as a result by learning from often as a result of interacting from others. It states that learning criminal behavior occurs within intimate personal groups. In this case, it would be the family and environmental relationships, such as peers, neighbors, etc. And it also states that learning criminal behavior, criminals perfect their deviant skills and behavior by learning from other members of the community who are already involved in criminal acts. And finally, the motivation and drive behind criminal acts is learned from others and perceptions of the law as either favorable or unfavorable. The relative deprivation theory gives insight onto why this situation may occur. It states that feelings of mistrust, envy, and aggression towards society and those with higher social standing cause an individual to feel injustice and deprived, therefore justifying to themselves their criminal behavior. They may feel inadequate in their ability to leave their impoverished and crime-stricken neighborhoods, and they this may cause them to resent those in higher social standing and higher classes. This may lead an individual to commit a variety of violent or criminal acts, such as stealing a car from a more wealthy individual, committing an assault or even a sexual assault against someone who they perceive to have treated them poorly or unfairly, murdering someone out of jealousy. The list goes on. Basically, these feelings of aggression and frustration often motivate offenders to commit criminal acts against individuals as well as society as a whole. Excuse me. So those were all examples of how direct influences affect criminal behavior. Indirect influences are important as well, and they include things such as mass media, social media, television, movies, video games, and other forms of entertainment. Studies have shown that exposure to violence on television, in the media, and in video games is linked to an increase of aggression, which can translate to an increase in crime. One study conducted by Albert Bandura shows that children who are exposed to even a limited number of violence and aggression are more likely to act aggressively and violent when in situations that produce frustration and hostility. In this study, children were given an art activity to work on while in the presence of an adult in the same room. Shortly after they began working on the art project, the adult began to violently attack a large doll with a mallet, hitting it in the face and repeatedly over and over, yelling things such as kick him, hit him, knock him down, sock him in the face, and this went on for 10 minutes. After that was done, the child was brought to a second room, which was filled with very fun and attractive toys, but after only 2 minutes, they were interrupted and told that they needed to be moved to a different room because the child could no longer play with those toys as they were special and needed to be saved for other children. They were taken to a third room with significantly less and less attractive toys to play with, and their toys included those for both non-aggressive and aggressive play, and the mallet and the large doll that were present in the first room were also present. When the adults left the room, the children who had been exposed to the violent outbursts were much more likely to use the mallet against the doll and attack it. They often used the exact same words and verbiage and motions as did the adult whom they witnessed. Children who were not exposed to the violent outbursts very rarely chose to use the aggressive toys, and when they did not act with the same amount of aggression or hostility, and they did not act as verbally aggressive as well. Studies have also shown that exposure to violent video games can cause an increase in aggression and therefore aggressive responses to negative stimulus. Dr. Anderson of Iowa State University has dedicated a large portion of his career to providing research proving this concept. He states that media and overall social acceptance of violence on television and in video games and on television causes parents to be less diligent in monitoring their children's violent media exposure. Children are therefore being exposed to violence sooner in life and more violent acts, and therefore they learn to act more aggressively. And finally, the two final theories I will use to explain why crime occurs are Hershey's social learning theory and the general theory of crime. Hershey's social learning theory contends that people become criminals because they lack or have weakened ties to society. The general theory of crime takes these concepts along with concepts from other aspects of different theories and states that all individuals have the same propensity to commit crime, and that self-control is the main factor in determining one's tendency toward criminal activity. Those with low self-control and little to no social or family ties are more likely to commit crime. And in addition, it proposes that the inclination to commit crime remains consistent. It's the opportunities that change. And therefore, so do people's rates of criminal behavior. Excuse me. This is the theory that I used in explaining my crime that I chose at the beginning of the semester, which was assault with a weapon. In my research, I found that violent crime occurs most often between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday in the months of May, July, August, and September. By using these two theories, we can contribute these findings to alcohol and drug use, which is more prevalent on nights and in weekends, the absence of otherwise non-criminal obligations such as work, school, and extracurricular activities that may be occurring during the week that are not present on the weekends. Also, in extreme weather such as heat and excessive rainfall have been linked to an increase in violent crime, and this is evident by the highest months, or the months with the highest crime rates being May, July, August, and September. The fact that these crimes occur more often on nights and weekends contend with the general theory of crime, their notion that the propensity to commit crimes remains present at all times, and that it's the opportunities that change. This makes sense, as criminals seemingly will have the same ability to commit crime at 1 in the afternoon, but the findings show that they're more likely to do so at midnight or later in the day. Potentially, again, because they have more opportunities to do so at night, due to less perceived police presence and supervision. This is also consistent with the GTC's belief that criminals are not always committing criminal and antisocial acts. They often live lives that consist of conventional behavior as well, including going to work, school, religious, and other social community events. There's many different other reasons that could contribute to an individual's cause of why they commit crime. These are just the ones that I found to be the most prevalent in explaining why. So I hope that you learned something, and thank you for watching.